Did he brush up on his knowledge of the Pechenegs, or did he bring a black mark? What did Putin and Trump's special envoy Witkoff talk about? Is a meeting between Putin and Zelensky possible in the near future? Will Trump be there? And is the end of the war in Ukraine really closer than it seems? The Kremlin is clearly preparing for something. Around the Russian capital, they have started to recreate the Soviet air defense system to protect against drones. Belarus is nervous too? Or is it just playing on nerves? Why is Lukashenko preparing the country for martial law? All this and more will be discussed in detail next. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel Ukraine Today. So the visit of last hope did take place after all. The day before, negotiations were held in the Kremlin between Russian President Putin and Stephen Witkoff, the special envoy of US President Donald Trump. The meeting lasted about 3 hours. Putin and Witkoff made no public statements after it. Yuri Ushakov, assistant to the president of the Russian Federation, soon stated that during the meeting the parties exchanged certain signals. He noted that the Kremlin would refrain from more detailed comments until Witkoff reports the results of the negotiations to the US president. Experts, however, suggest that Putin may have sent several signals to calm Trump down with an aerial ceasefire, which is very advantageous for him right now, and to show readiness for a meeting with Zelensky. So, is a meeting between the Ukrainian president and the Russian dictator possible in the near future? Will Trump be present at it? And is the end of the war in Ukraine really closer than we think? More on this in our report.
An aerial ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. Bloomberg reports that Putin may make concessions to Trump and agree to an aerial ceasefire, but without stopping the war on the ground, in order to prevent the threat of sanctions being imposed.
The Russian Federation has never kept its word, and expecting the Russians to meticulously keep it this time is definitely not worth the significant risk. There are a truly huge number of viable options available for the Russians to consider and implement. Even if they now give such a significant political pass to Trump so that he doesn't impose any further sanctions and declare an aerial ceasefire, let's say a unilateral one for the time being, it will cost them absolutely nothing later to stage a significant provocation and then blame everything entirely on Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Witkoff has already met with Putin. Their conversation lasted about 3 hours. And it is precisely based on the results of the meeting between Witkoff and Putin that Trump will decide whether to impose tariffs on Russia.
Let's see what happens.
The Financial Times also reports that Trump intends to impose sanctions on Russia's shadow fleet if Russia does not agree to a ceasefire. On top of that, the US president believes that lowering the price of Russian oil will also hurt Russia.
These secondary sanctions that Trump is essentially using to threaten Putin aren't very powerful, but they do cause serious damage to the economies of China and India. And well, despite the fact that China is still the main geopolitical opponent of the US, there is a huge amount of American investment in China. Could this also backfire and have certain political consequences for Trump himself? Of course, yes, it could.
What sanctions? Come on! Reuters reports that even these ultimatums from Trump can be easily ignored by Putin. After all, he is convinced that he can win the war and that new US sanctions will not have a significant impact on Russia.
Will the introduction of such sanctions by the United States and Europe potentially deal a blow to the Russian economy? Of course it will. It will deal a very serious blow. And considering that oil revenues are still the absolutely key and most significant source of income for the Russian Federation, derived from the extensive export of raw materials and various natural resources, in reality, in the foreseeable medium term, Russia undeniably faces a very serious and profound economic crisis. Quite possibly even a complete collapse and a sovereign default.
The White House has announced that Trump will make a statement today at 23:30 Kiev time. The topic of the statement was not specified.
We all understand perfectly well that a lot will depend on the information Witkoff brings back, essentially, on his conversation. What his conversation with Putin will be about.
Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry stated that a key moment has come for ending the war and that negotiations between Ukraine and Russia are entering an almost decisive stage. And
the Chinese side made this statement against the backdrop of contacts with Brazil. That is, once again, if you look at the full text of the statement, they recalled the group that was, if you remember, created on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, the Friends of Peace, And now, indeed, it seems to me that the People's Republic of China may very well revive this crucial peace plan together with the nation of Brazil, especially against the significant backdrop of such serious and sustained pressure from former President Trump on the various countries of the global south.
Meanwhile, the president of Ukraine reported that he had a productive conversation with the president of the United States on August 5th.
He is very kind, well-informed. He knows about the Russian strikes, knows about the situation at the front, about the fact that the Russians are now trying to intensify their attacks. He does not know about the situation at the front, about what the Russians are currently intensifying. We in Ukraine fully support the American position of an immediate ceasefire.
In addition, they discussed the defense agreement between Ukraine and the United States, specifically the draft agreement on drones, which has already been prepared by the Ukrainian side.
Ukraine has indeed already prepared a draft drone agreement with the United States of America. This was stated by Volodymyr Zelensky. This could be one of the strongest agreements the president noted after a phone conversation with his American counterpart Donald Trump. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, a very impressive UAV called Vector has rolled off the production line. But drone production in Russia is also not standing still. The Russians have started equipping Shahed drones with anti-tank mines. We have gathered information about the latest drones that have been added to the arsenals of the armed forces of Ukraine and the occupying army.
Shahed drones with anti-tank mines. This is how Russia has upgraded these strike UAVs, equipping them with cassettes containing PTM-3 anti-tank mines. It was exactly these drones that struck several regions of Ukraine on August 4th. This was reported by Ukrainian radio technology specialist Serhiy Flesh-Beskresnov on his social media.
Unfortunately, we have a new problem. Today, Shahed drones were detected in several regions at once, carrying 2 cassettes with PTM-3 anti-tank mines under their wings. This mine is equipped with a magnetic detonator and reacts to vehicles nearby. For now, the enemy's intention is unclear, what exactly they want to mine and why. It could be terrorist attacks on public roads, or perhaps an attempt to target our agriculture.
Additionally, PTM-3 anti-tank mines weighing 5 kilograms and capable of penetrating up to 60 millimeters of armor have started to be mounted on Russian Lancet loitering munitions.
The use of PTM-3 mines solves several problems at once. First, it reduces the cost and simplifies production. The mine is integrated into the drone without complex custom assembly. Second, it increases the reliability of striking the target. The ready-made munition is specifically designed to combat armored vehicles. Third, it eliminates production risks. A mass-produced engineering munition is easier to put into serial production.
The occupier's army wants to solve its shortage of Kalibr-type missiles by using Shahed drones with jet propulsion. The main focus is on mass production and simplicity of UAV manufacturing, and small design additions like mounting anti-tank mines make these UAVs quite dangerous.
The main principle is a large number of aerial targets and a combined attack, thanks to the introduction of the jet-powered Shahed, which in essence will be able to replace the functions previously performed by cruise missiles. In other words, these are higher speeds, a different interception principle, and a different detection principle.
In turn, Ukrainian engineers have invented another effective way to shoot down Russian Shaheds, the interceptor drone Mongoose. This anti-aircraft drone is jet-powered, and it is not a kamikaze drone but is reusable. It can reach speeds of up to 320 kilometers per hour. The maximum flight altitude is 5,000 meters. Its operational range is 12 kilometers.
The Mongoose is a reusable drone with a jet engine and an automatic guidance system. According to the developer's concept, it will approach Shaheds, fire a buckshot charge at the engine or propeller of the enemy drone, and then either continue its mission or return for refueling and reloading. Defender Media Publication.
The first squadron of these drones has already been created. Currently, Mongooses are being actively delivered to the air defense missile brigades of the Ukrainian armed forces. In addition to domestic developments, Ukraine has also successfully localized the production of German reconnaissance UAVs Vector, which are being effectively used on the front lines. The military explains that the main advantage of these drones is their optics.
Switching to thermal mode. If the sun has warmed up, meaning it's already high enough above the horizon, the barrel of the cannon heats up and you can tell the difference. It's a very, very big advantage that it's combined. If you need it, you switch. If not, you switch back. During the day, we switch to the camera and see that this warm spot is actually a cat. That is, from 800 meters, you can distinguish a cat and actually see it. Not
just for defense and reconnaissance. Ukrainian drones are delivering serious strikes even to the enemy's rear. Moreover, domestic UAVs stand out not by quantity but by quality. One of the latest strikes on Russia was at the Novokuybyshevsk oil refinery. After the attack by Ukrainian drones, it stopped operating, and the Ryazan oil refinery cut its output in half.
Unbelievable.
Our strikes deep in the rear of the Russian Federation, the drones that force Russia to go into blanket coverage mode and close its airspace, are having an impact on Russia's economy and its capabilities. Therefore, from our strategic point of view, it is absolutely essential that we actively and significantly strengthen our capabilities when it comes to advanced strike drones. This involves creating not just highly sophisticated drones that possess the ability to effectively bypass complex electronic warfare systems and remain completely undetected by modern air defense networks, but also those that can reliably carry a very substantial and impactful payload, ensuring their operational effectiveness and mission success.
Thanks to developments in the UAV sector, Ukraine has been able to successfully hold back the aggressor and deliver effective strikes. For its part, Russia is also developing this sector quite successfully.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The reputation of Ukrainian drones has even reached Moscow. Around the capital of the Russian Federation, they have begun to recreate the Soviet air defense system to protect against drones. The Kremlin is clearly preparing for something. Belarus is also nervous, or perhaps just playing on nerves. Lukashenko may announce martial law in the country in the coming days. These and other news stories are covered in our military review.
The Kremlin will make concessions to Trump to avoid secondary sanctions, Bloomberg reports. The agency, citing sources, wrote that the Kremlin is considering several options for concessions to U.S. President Donald Trump regarding his attempts to end Russia's full-scale aggression against Ukraine. A source for the publication states that one possible proposal could be the suspension of airstrikes using drones and missiles as a gesture of de-escalation, provided that Ukraine also signs the agreement.
Putin is indeed genuinely afraid of a direct confrontation with the United States, a truly serious and significant confrontation, because in any and all circumstances, it would undoubtedly and profoundly negatively affect the Russian Federation's entire economy, causing considerable economic repercussions. Plus, other countries that depend on the United States could also, so to speak, seriously damage their economic relations with Russia, among other things. This could include Brazil or India, which are currently actively supporting the Russian Federation, not to mention Turkey and other countries. I mean, those who use Russian energy resources.
Supposedly, while talking about peace, Russia is preparing for war. The Ministry of Defense of the occupying country has decided to recreate the Soviet-era small air defense ring around Moscow. According to journalists' estimates, over the past 2 years, the Russian military has built more than 50 anti-aircraft missile system positions in the Moscow region. According to satellite images, about 15 of them were built in the summer of 2025. Mainly, they are installing Panzer S-1 air defense systems there. According to Reuters, Russian general staff officers promised President Vladimir Putin that Ukraine's defense along the front line would collapse within the next 2 to 3 months. Sources for the publication claim that Putin believes in his army's victory and pays no attention to Trump and his statements about ending the war.
This means they're going to throw everything they've got into the fight right now. Especially since there are only a couple of days left until the end of Trump's ultimatum, when he said that 10 days meant 50 days. The initial 50 days of this significant period concluded on September 2nd, and the subsequent 10 days, well, they are essentially set to conclude the day after tomorrow. So we will certainly see how events unfold. And quite naturally, right before this crucial 10-day deadline definitively expires, Vladimir Putin will undoubtedly begin to make very clear and conciliatory gestures toward Donald Trump, indicating that their forces are no longer actively shelling, that they are indeed ready for a comprehensive and lasting peace, and so on and so forth. But this will only be done to buy time. And Trump understands perfectly well, in fact, that the Russians have no intention of making peace. They have a goal they want to achieve, a pre-war goal. And here the question is whether Trump will pretend that he believes Putin.
On the night of August 6th, Ukraine attacked the Rostov region and for the second night in a row struck the Tatsinskaya railway station. There was another fire there. Local authorities report an alleged grass fire near a residential building from which 3 families were evacuated. The Russian leadership aims to form 10 new divisions by the end of the year, said Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky. According to Syrsky, 2 divisions have already been created, so Ukraine will be forced to continue mobilization and strengthen its army.
Most likely, these are the very people who were mobilized this year through recruitment in the Russian Federation. CNN has talked about this, and so has Bild. Studies on the war have also discussed this. So it's not really a big secret how many people Russia needs to mobilize.
Support from our partners, which continues without interruption, is also important for our country. The U.S. State Department has approved a potential sale to Ukraine of repair, maintenance, and logistics services for M777 howitzers. The total value of the package is $203.5 million. This and other aid packages help Ukrainians hold the front, where Russian forces continue their offensive. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports that the enemy is currently conducting offensive operations to the northeast of Pokrovsk, attempting to cut off the logistics of Ukrainian troops, but has not achieved any success.
This is the informational component of hybrid warfare. The goal is to show that they are already in Pokrovsk. The situation there is not very good. There are about 15 kilometers between the northern and southern Russian groups, and Pokrovsk is already surrounded from 3 sides. And basically, if this encirclement, let's say, continues to tighten and the distance becomes less than 10 kilometers, then according to all military rules, regulations, and military science, the troops need to be withdrawn.
Another area where Russia has not had any success for a year is its own territories in the Kursk and Belgorod regions. With their special operation, the Ukrainians have taken this war to a new level and proven that they are capable of fighting for their independence by any means necessary.
China and Russia are conducting joint exercises in the Sea of Japan. Artillery firing and anti-submarine operations are being carried out, involving destroyers, submarines, and support ships. The exercises began just 2 days after Trump announced the redeployment of 2 nuclear submarines in response to Medvedev's remarks. All the details are coming up in the report, and while you're watching, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel Ukraine Today.
Russia and China held another round of joint 3-day exercises from August 3rd to 5th. This time in the Sea of Japan, several ships, aircraft, and combat missions. Everything is being done to the fullest extent. And all this is happening against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Ukraine and Moscow's international isolation.
These particular exercises cannot truly demonstrate anything of significant value to anyone, and they ultimately serve no practical purpose whatsoever, except perhaps as a rather elaborate kind of mating dance performance. Large males come out facing each other, stand up impressively, show off their huge fangs and teeth, display how powerful their wings are, and generally try to intimidate one another in every possible way. They might even shout, call out, cackle, or growl. But at the same time, during these kinds of displays, these mating dances, it almost never comes to an actual fight because there's simply no point.
The exercise program includes rescue operations for submarines, joint countermeasures against underwater threats, as well as air and missile defense.
There's nothing new about them. I still remember working at ORT Channel 25 years ago when we used to show these Russian-Chinese exercises. They were held, I think, every year and sometimes even several times a year, depending on the international situation and whether there was a need to perform a mating dance for someone else so that, the planet would look favorably upon one performer or another.
Beijing emphasized that these maneuvers are meant to contribute to the deepening of a comprehensive strategic partnership. But is China really interested in a partnership with Russia?
We also need to work on the relationship between Russia and China. Russians and Chinese do not like each other. I don't know if you know this, but the Chinese have already changed their maps of the Far East, adding Chinese names to Russian cities, because I think they're making it clear that one day they want to reclaim these territories.
China and Russia have been conducting joint naval exercises since 2012. But since the start of the full-scale war, they have intensified their military cooperation.
An alliance is something between equal partners. Today, China and Russia are not equal partners. Today, Russia is in a vassal-like, completely dependent position with respect to China. Especially when India drops out of Russia's oil trade, only China will be left. So what are we even talking about? What kind of alliance could there be? There can't be any alliance there. Putin's Russia is like an apprentice to Xi Jinping, and whatever Xi Jinping says, that's what they'll do.
Nevertheless, China remains neutral on the issue of the war against Ukraine. Although, judging by their actions, you wouldn't say so.
China acts pragmatically in all situations, and for example, when developing economic cooperation with America, they don't stop to think about what, say, Putin and his circle might think about it. They go ahead and develop it without any concern. When they have the opportunity to strengthen their political influence and therefore ultimately their economy by interacting with certain figures, global outcasts like the Kims or the Putins, they do that as well because it's simply part of their policy.
Joint military actions by two nuclear powers are not just a signal, but also a potential threat. After all, such exercises can be used as a cover. Or not.
China will never go for a militaristic confrontation with America, because the United States is one of China's largest trading partners. China is just as dependent on America as America is economically dependent on China. Because if some kind of conflict suddenly breaks out between them, then accordingly China would lose about a quarter of its economy, a quarter of its income, most likely. So in general, there's no need to look for some big hidden threat to Ukraine or to the civilized world in these exercises. That's simply not the case.
Meanwhile, the EU is concerned about China's growing role in supporting Russia's war against Ukraine, and as a result, they intend to push for sanctions against Beijing as well.